welcome to the Love Like Crazy podcast. We're your hosts, Jay and Stacey Coleman, and today we are in beautiful Orlando, Florida at the Hi Hello Labs as we're recording a couple of different episodes. And today we're going to talk about an episode that's touched a lot of lives here in Florida, but also many different parts of the country. Stacey, I know that this is a story we're going to tell today that is for us personally, and it's one that you wanted to be able to share. And it's kind of one of those stories that it's a little emotional for us, but we're going to talk about natural disasters and how you can actually, as you're facing something that's just can be overwhelming, how it actually can be something that can help grow you in your life.
Right, because we personally faced a natural disaster some years back in 2016 in our community in Louisiana. And so we're going to share a little bit about that, our story, and how we managed to survive it.
Now, before we jump into the story, we're gonna kind of do this in a couple different ways. We're gonna talk about our story. We're gonna share it with you, and hopefully, if you're walking through something that's overwhelming in your life, whether it's a natural disaster or not, our story can help you. And then we're actually going to talk about some different ways that you can manage when you're facing something that is overwhelming, whether it's a natural disaster or a change in life or many different things. But before we do that, I want to take a quick moment to thank you, our listeners, because you guys have helped us grow this podcast. It's doing very, very well, actually. And if you wouldn't mind, do us a favor, click the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you give us a comment. If there's a topic that you would like for us to be able to talk about, make sure you leave us that in the comment section. And
make sure that you're following along. That way you'll get the notifications.
Yeah, here's a good idea. Share it with your friends.
Arrives. Absolutely. Yes. If you hear an episode that helps you in any way, I mean, you know that it can help someone else close to you, please share that episode.
The reason we're asking you to do that is because our heart behind this podcast is to build stronger marriages and families.
Right.
And you guys are helping us to grow this. So thank you so very much.
Thank you
so,
to
Stacey,
all of our listeners.
All right, let's dive off into this thing. And I know that what we're going to talk about today can kind of stir up some emotions. A lot of times whenever we actually have a storm in Louisiana, a lot of times it makes you kind of nervous. A little bit anxious. You hate whenever people talk about flooding and things like that. I personally like to joke about, things like that. And a lot of times guys do that, but you don't like that.
That's how guys deal with it. They joke about the serious things that we face. Like, well, in one of the earlier episodes, we kind of touched on the fact that we went through a natural disaster, but we never really expounded on it. And I think today that's what we're wanting to do, is kind of share more of our story with the listeners, because I know that in the recent hurricanes that have, hit Florida and the East Coast, there are a lot of hurting people, and they have encountered what we've encountered. In some aspects, even encountered things way worse than we did. And I want to acknowledge that. And, that our prayers are with all those who are dealing with these natural disasters, because we have lived through this firsthand as well.
Well, one of the things is we've seen so many, natural disasters hit our country. And there's a lot of different reasons. We're not here to debate that or talk about that. But it's been a very active hurricane season on the Gulf Coast. We've had, I know in Louisiana, was it Hurricane Florence? Now that was one that was just kind of, for us, we thought it was going to be, somewhat,
we were bracing for it. We were prepared.
But it was nothing more really than a little slight windstorm, some rain. We didn't even lose power for it, actually. And then you had Hurricane Helene that came through and just devastated it. It hits Florida. You have it go up through Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, all these different states that were just utterly devastated. And you had people from the mudslides to the flooding, people losing everything. And the difference in our story, we faced a lot of loss in our life. We faced a lot of, things that were hard to walk through, to rebuild. But our whole house wasn't destroyed and washed away from a mudslide. And then most recently we had, what was the latest one? Milton. Hurricane Milton that came across Florida, went through Tampa, Sarasota, Orlando, and there was some quite a bit of damage and devastation for that. So it's been a really active hurricane season, and there's a lot of people hurting right now. I know for us as a church, there's a lot of relief efforts going on. You got organizations like Samaritan's Purse, Convoy of Hope, organizations that helped us when we went through our natural disaster, but they're stepping out doing what they do so very, very well. A lot of churches responding, and as a church, we responded. We sent a trailer load of supplies up to North Carolina, to Georgia. We sent a team.
And because of what we went through, our church and our community are very quick to, we want to help, we want to serve, we know what they're going through.
Well, when we walked through our flood in 2016, we had a organization in North Carolina that showed up with a tractor trailer of supplies from North Carolina. So our church immediately, whenever I said something about putting supplies together, next thing you know, we got bottled water, we got formula, we got diapers, we got all these different things, non-perishable food items that we were able to send out. And we sent our cooking team up to Asheville. They worked there for a week preparing meals for first responders, for families that were in need. So it was a great response, but man, the community jumped into action because we know what it feels like to walk through something that's so devastating. Right. So very active season hurricane-wise. A lot of people that are hurting. Hopefully this episode will help them. Stacey, let's do this. Why don't you start off, talk about what kind of lead into this, because we were celebrating something that was a wonderful time for our family when this natural disaster hit us.
Right. So this took place in August of 2016 in South Louisiana. And so for us personally, we were preparing for our oldest son's wedding, and it was a destination wedding. He married a young lady from Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Well, it was a destination wedding for us.
It was a destination.
Not for her.
It was a destination wedding for us as we were planning this, and so we had months leading, into this. Very excited. We were heading out to Hot Springs on a Wednesday. We were going up there early. Their wedding was on Friday night, and so it's kind of crazy because like my house was spotless. It was clean. We're like leaving out and we're, we had just spent like so much money for this wedding. And we jokingly on the drive to Hot Springs said, we cannot wait till Monday. It's payday.
It's payday on Monday.
And so we're like,
I remember us talking about, we're going to work on rebuilding our savings account through the end of the year.
Because we had spent some of our savings for this wedding. And so we headed out, to Hot Springs, and beautiful sunny day when we left, and we had heard there was going to be some rain.
There's going to be 3 days of rain.
Yeah,
which we're from South Louisiana.
That's common.
It's common. We have rain, especially in the summertime.
Right, and so we went up there and not thinking anything of it. And so this rain started while we were gone, and it was a storm that the only way to explain it is that it hovered over our area, over our community.
If you looked at it from the Doppler, it looked like that, but all it did was rain. I mean, it just poured rain for days over our area.
Right. I can't remember exactly how many inches. But
I think that they said in our community, which we lived, Denham Springs, Watson Central is the area where we're at. Our home is actually in Watson. I think they said our community, over the course of those days, it was about 30 to 32 inches of rain.
Right. So this no-name storm just dropped so many inches of rain, and we were not, our area was not prepared for that.
I don't know if you can prepare for that.
No.
I mean, it's like you prep for a hurricane. You go get the supplies
we had
to
no
make
warning.
Gumbo, all that kind of stuff. You get your generator gassed up. But for something like of this magnitude with that much rain, you can't prep.
Right. And it was just, supposedly a simple rain.
So we're preparing for a family celebration, headed up there, and it turned quickly from a family celebration to a time of just being overwhelmed.
Yes. So we were in Hot Springs preparing for the wedding, and we received a phone call from one of our neighbors.
I'm in the foyer of the hotel, the lobby, eating breakfast with my mom, my dad, my sister, and my neighbor calls me, and he said, we have tremendous neighbors. They're great. He says, "Hey, I need to get the code to get into your house." And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, you're about to get water in your house. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? He said, we've had so much rain in the last day. He said, it just started raining. It won't stop. They had built a little shop with an apartment in it. They were getting ready to build a house. He said, we've already had, I think at that point, a foot of water in their place. Other neighbors around us were flooding. Now, mind you, we had just built our house not even a year and a half before. It was our dream home. We planned for this.
And we built it up higher than flood.
Yeah, we were not in a flood zone. A lot of people say, well, Louisiana, you're in a flood. We were not in a flood zone. The area where we live had never flooded before. So we didn't have flood insurance because, we had never expected anything like this to happen. So he calls me and says, you've got water about to get in your house. So give him the code. And I go in that moment, it's like I just kind of shut down. Like all I could think, it's just I'm in shock. I remember going upstairs. You're still asleep because we had stayed up late the night before. And I told you, I said, just prepare yourself, but we're getting ready to flood at the house. And I mean, just like I can't snap my fingers, just like that, you immediately went into like panic mode.
I did.
And so
I did. So yeah, we had the rehearsal dinner and all of that went well. And so I was getting up the next morning, getting my stuff together to go do all the fun things with the girls. And you were getting ready to go hang out with the guys, preparing for the wedding was that night.
Yeah.
And so the entire day we tried to keep it to ourselves. We didn't want to tell our three sons. We didn't want to tell anyone else.
We didn't want to ruin the day.
We didn't want to ruin the day, though inside the day was absolutely ruined for us. And so we were just trying to stay focused, praying for the best. And so it just so happened, though, that someone posted something on social media of the water that was rushing down our street. And so one of the boys was like, what is happening? What is going on at home? And we're like, we're not sure. We just know that they're getting into, the neighbors are going to get into our house. They're going to lift our furniture the best they can. I gave some specific instructions because we had just, we still had boxes that we had not unpacked.
We were still settling in the house.
Because we were only there a year and a half building the house. And so I did think ahead enough to say, hey, there are some boxes with photos in them. Can you please lift them up higher, put them on a bed? I mean, there were just a lot of keepsake kind of things that I'm so very grateful that my neighbors were able to salvage. But of course, when it was all said and done, we did lose an awful lot of our belongings. But during that time, it was very difficult that day. We were going through the motions, trying to enjoy this, momentous occasion with our oldest son getting married and all the excitement that comes with that. And when we got the photos back from the wedding and the family, you could just see it all over us that we were worried.
It was a pasted smile on our face.
We did retakes later because they turned out so terrible.
Well, it was funny because it was like we talked about, put on your happy face.
Yeah, we tried.
That's exactly what we did for the day. We just put on our happy face.
We really tried to be in the moment of what was happening with our family, but it was difficult.
So we go through that day. This is 9:00 in the morning. We get the news. We go through the wedding ceremony. Our participation in the wedding ceremony. I know, we're pastors, but Tyler had said, hey, we just want you to be our mom and dad that day. I don't want you to do the ceremony, but will you pray over us for the ceremony? So we did. We prayed over them during the ceremony, and we're driving from the church to the reception venue, and I get a call from our neighbor, and he says, hey, listen, you're okay. The water lacked like an inch getting in your house, and it's receding now, so it looks like you're in the clear.
So we got excited.
Yeah, so we spent the whole day just overwhelmed with our house is flooding, and that emotional moment whenever you find out like, oh, thank you, Jesus, our house is not going to flood. Feel bad for our neighbors because many of them flooded, but we're gonna be okay. And so we go to the reception, and I like to say,
party.
I'm like, let's eat cake, let's party. We didn't flood. And we were able to enjoy that night, ate lots of food, had a lot of cake. You know,
Yeah.
we personally don't drink, so we drank some punch, but
Hmm.
there was that.
Well, we
Uh,
felt that that weight that we were carrying all day was suddenly lifted, and
yeah,
like, okay, now we really can celebrate and not be concerned about what's going on back home. And so that's what we did until we woke up the next
yeah. The
morning.
next morning, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning with my phone ringing, and it's one of the people who had come with us to the wedding. It was their son. He was calling, and they were on our street. They live on our street. And he says, "Hey, we flooded in our house, so we moved to their house, which is several neighborhoods away, and we need to get a hold of them. I've called several times; they won't answer their phones. So can you? Their house is flooded. We're across the street. Everything's flooding." So we're like, well, I thought the water was receding. Like, what's going on? And so we go get them up, let them call and connect with them. And now this is 5 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
Next thing you know, we hear another phone ring in another room, and it's like it's you can hear it moving
Hmm.
around us in the
Because we had
hotel
a lot of people from Louisiana
that were with
there
us.
with us for celebrating for the wedding, and so they were constantly, we hear phones ringing, and then some of them have packed quickly. They're coming out and getting ready to leave, and they're like, I have to get back home. Some had left their
Yeah.
kids, and they were headed back to. They didn't know what they were heading back to.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Some of them immediately, like one of our families that was with us, his son and daughter were at the house, and I think the son was 16, 17 years old, but his
Hmm.
daughter was much, much younger. And so
Hmm.
they jumped in their vehicle and immediately took off. Another family gets a call that his daughter, they had been flooded out, and she's with the family she was staying with, and they were standing on the side of Highway 16, didn't know where to go, didn't know what to do because everything was flooding. So we move into this mode of like trying to plan and prep and all this kind of stuff. And I guess it was probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm trying to get a shower, and every time I would, my phone's just ringing constantly. And mayor of our little community calls and says, "Hey, we'd like to use the church as a place to be able to evacuate people. Yes, make it happen." And by 8 o'clock, it was done because the church had flooded, our house had flooded, and it was happening so fast. And it's just like the entire community was inundated. You had so many people are evacuating, and I had a good friend of mine. I guess it was probably about 9 o'clock. I knew it was bad whenever he and I get on the phone, and he's talking to me, telling me what's going on, and I hear in his voice he breaks emotionally, and I'm like, I told Stacey, I said, this is really bad. That if he's getting emotional over something like this, it must be pretty significant.
Right. So I want to explain to everyone kind of what happened was the rain did stop and it was receding, but then in between where our church is at in the community and where we live is a river that because of so much rain, the river
It
was
backed up.
rising. It backed up. There was a creek near our house, so all of this water started backing up and rising, and so the river overflowed. And when it did, it went one direction towards our church, and then the other direction towards our house. And so even though the rain had stopped, it didn't keep. Where was all the rainwater going to go?
Yeah, and it just started backing up and going into people's homes and whatnot. And it wasn't just our little community, Baton Rouge.
Hmm.
Anything north of the interstate seemed to flood. You had
It's like it
Lafayette that
just
was flooding.
continued to roll to the because it couldn't hold all the water.
So I don't remember what the actual numbers were, but so many structures throughout the area, throughout the city flooded. I would say that church wise, like our church, I got about all of our facilities. We've got an office and youth facility, an outreach facility, a church facility, and all of those buildings got about 20 to 24 inches of water. Our
Mhm.
home got about 30 to 36 inches of water in it. And our congregation, probably about 70%, 75% of our congregation flooded. So
Mhm.
here we are, we're stuck in Arkansas. We make our way down to Natchitoches, and we stayed there for what, 2 days?
Right. And knowing that all of this is happening, we're still, we have family from other parts of the state that we're like, okay, we need to leave and we have to get them on their way. And we almost made like a caravan with all of the different ones my son's friends who were in his wedding. We're like all just headed back. And so we stayed, a couple of hours north because we weren't sure if we could get
Couldn't
back
get in.
in.
We
And
had people telling me whenever we would call, like, don't come back.
mhm,
You can't get in. Everything's flooded. They're evacuating people. And bear in mind that we're still trying to pastor through this because we're going on
mhm,
Facebook Live and
mhm.
connecting with people that way. We're trying to connect with people on the phone to let them know, hey, we're going to make it through this. And so it was we're facing this personally, but also we're facing this as ones who are pastoring a congregation
Mhm.
and a community as well.
Right. So it was a very stressful time. Yeah, I remember going, on Facebook Live and just trying to reassure everyone that it was going to be okay, though yet we didn't really know. if- I didn't know if I was going to be okay
Yeah.
because we had no clue of what we were really going to drive back into.
Well, the crazy part is the uncertainty. Here we
Right.
are at this place. We have no flood insurance. Your
We had just
normal
spent all this money on a
spent all
wedding.
this money on this wedding, and I remember just I'm not an emotional type person to break down very often, but I remember when all this is going on, just the shock of what we were walking
Mhm.
through, breaking down a couple times emotionally, trying to keep it away from her because I wanted to be strong for her and be a rock for her. So I would go into the bathroom, or I go away from her, and I have a moment and get my act together, and then go back out and tend to her. So it was a very emotional thing to be able to walk through, to know, like, it's just so uncertain. Like, how are we
Yeah.
going to rebuild? Where's the money going to come from?
It was a lot of
And
overwhelm.
yeah,
It was,
yeah,
when you think of it all together, because it wasn't just our home. It was our church. It was all of our a huge percentage of our community were affected.
right.
All of these families that we, serve.
And my phone was ringing off the hook. I was getting texts. People were Facebooking me, messaging me on Facebook, and just all these people reaching out, all these people going through such something that was so desperate. We decided to respond to a disaster because, as a church, that's what we
Hmm.
do. We're a couple hours away. We had stayed in Natchitoches for a couple nights. If you're from Louisiana, it's Natchitoches. It's one of the things people outside of Louisiana don't know how to pronounce a lot of these Louisiana names.
Hmm.
But we stayed there. Then we made our way down to Alexandria. I remember renting like a panel truck. Went to Sam's Club, filled that truck from top to bottom, front to back, with disaster relief supplies, food, because that's our thing. We're going to
Diapers,
respond.
and in our minds, we're hurricane prepping.
Yeah,
We're thinking like what we do when we prepare for a hurricane, not the a flooding event is different.
yeah. So we make our way down. I think it was Monday that we were actually able to
Mhm.
get home. So that
Mhm.
started on Friday. We were able to get home on Monday.
Mhm.
And I remember, we get to the first place we went, to the church. And here's the coolest thing of all: we already had people in the church that had started pulling the carpet out. We already had people, had stacked the chairs. Everything had flooded. Everything was ruined.
Mhm.
So they had stacked all the chairs in the foyer. They're stripping carpet out. They're starting to squeegee
Mhm.
the water out. The smell was just like a musty mildew. And
Mhm.
the craziest thing of all, even though we had all of these structures had water in them just a few days before, we didn't lose electricity. So they already had the air conditioners running, starting to dry things out. So now we're in disaster, like, hey, let's recover from this. We're helping people. We're giving out supplies and goods, but we've also got to get back on our feet and rebuild the church, rebuild our house, help other people rebuild their place. And so there was a lot going on. So
There
first thing, we
was.
go to the church.
Well, on the way back, I just remember seeing the devastation. It looked like something out of a movie, and driving up to our home and seeing that our neighbors and others um, had already, gotten into the home. They were trying to salvage what they could. You rip out the carpet, you begin to,
Go 4 feet up on the sheetrock, depending on the amount of water
right,
you had.
right. And see, all of that was new to me. That a flooding disaster I had not been involved in before, preparing for a hurricane and having wind damage or a tree fall or something of that nature, being without power. That was common. but I really had no understanding of what you're supposed to do when your home or a building floods, how you have got to immediately um, rip
Start
out all
cleanup mode,
right cleanup mode, rip out the carpet, start knocking out the
mucking it out.
mucking it out. I was not aware of that, that concept of what was really happening. And so it was a shock to my system. And the only word that I could really use, especially driving up and walking into our newly built home, was just that I was devastated. I was devastated to see holes in the walls, and that a huge portion of our furniture and our belongings had already been put out by the side of the road.
Yeah.
And I understand that, those who came in and helped, they were helping us, but at that moment, I just can't even really express the emotions
Well,
that I had.
it's crazy because you leave to go and the house is nice and perfect and clean
Right,
and
and
together,
cleaned.
and you come back and it's flooded out and all your stuff has floated all over the place. And
Mhm.
you drive up to a pile of sheetrock and carpet and furniture that's in the front yard because peeps had already started, mucking our house out and cleaning it out. And the way it works, depending on the level of water you got, like we had 30 inches, not quite 3 feet in our house. And so you're going to go 4 feet up on the sheetrock and you're going to cut out the sheetrock and bust it out, take all
Mhm.
your cabinets out, all the insulation out, all the flooring out. So basically, when you look through the house, everything 4 feet down is just gone. And so we come back and they had already started that process. And I remember and I'm just like, oh, good. People here have already started helping. And you were just kind of like, in shock.
I just want, like, everybody, like, stop, please. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
I think that was the mindset that I was in, and I just remember walking over to the wall and, like, salvaging a picture,
Yeah.
a family picture, and I said, I'm taking this with me. And
I did a video after it was all said and done because we piled everything. You can see the wiring because you got to take out all the outlets, the wiring, everything that got wet. You got to take all that out. And I had everything at the road. This was probably about a week later, and I'm driving by, like, hey, this is what it's like whenever all your belongings have been placed at the road for the dump to
mhm,
pick up.
mhm.
And I would say probably what 60, 70, 80% of all of our stuff got
Mhm. Well,
ripped.
all of the furniture, we had not finished furnishing everything. Like I said, we had just built this house. It hadn't only been like a year and a half. And the furniture, the new furniture that we had bought, we had paid cash for it. And we were like really proud of that.
Yeah.
Like, all of this furniture is paid for. And so all I could think was, all of this paid for furniture is out in the front yard. And so over the next so many months, the word debris was used like over and over. And it's like to see the pictures and to drive, through these neighborhoods that were affected by the flood and see all of the
Right.
debris. And the cleanup is not quick by any means. And so it stays there for a
When
long
it's
time.
like you're driving and both sides of the street, you have stuff piled, 8,
Yeah.
9, 10 feet high. The smell
Yeah.
is just the stench of the flood, all the stuff that was waterlogged and whatnot. And I remember I would go to the house and work for a little while. Then I go to church and work for a little
Mhm.
while. We had a
Mhm.
team of people at the church working. We had people in and out of our house. The cool part was, just like a lot of the natural disasters we've seen, and all the other disasters we see, there's always teams of people that show up to help. You have relief efforts come in. You have these organizations that come in. You have volunteers that come
Right.
in. And so many people helped us. So many people helped the church. So many people helped the people in the community, our congregation, the
Mhm.
other churches in the
Mhm.
community. And it literally was almost breathtaking. I don't know if I don't use that word that often, but the amount of response, the help that came in
Mhm.
was just, it was breathtaking. It was just like, God, you're so good that you would send all these people and they're coming in full of the love of Christ, full of compassion to be able to minister to us in our
Yeah.
time of need. The difficulty for me is I'm the one used to going and helping
Going
and
and help.
serving
Yeah.
and doing all
Right.
this, and
Because
I don't ask for help.
our church is known in the community for serving and helping. And ultimately, our entire, like, what kind of percentage would you say of our congregation
Probably 70-75% of our
were
congregation flooded.
affected? And so, but we are so very thankful for those that did not flood. I know that there's such a thing as survivor's guilt, and a lot of them talked to me about that they felt guilty because they survived. And I said, thank goodness that you were not flooded. Your home survived, and you were able to get out there and help all of us
Yep.
that were affected. In fact, we had close friends that we were able to go and stay with them, and us and our two sons that were still living at home. We were able to live with them for some weeks.
Yeah, I think we stayed with them 2 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks. And then we had some other friends from another town bring over a camper, and we were able to park that by our house and live in the camper while we were rebuilding. And so there was
You
a
love
lot of
living
help.
in that camper.
I don't have a desire to go camping ever.
Well,
it was an experience. It was an experience.
And it was really cool because our friend, he called and said, look, I'm going to get you guys a camper to live in. And we lived in that camper for months.
Mm-hmm.
And finally you said, hey, look, get me out of this camper. I come home one day and you're sitting there on the couch and you're crying, and you're like, just get me out of this camper. Because every night we have two teenage sons at this point, one's 6'5", one's 6'4". They're on the other end of the camper. And they turn over in bed. The whole thing would move. If you use the shower or the toilet, you'd smell the sewage. My feet would hang off the bed at nighttime. So you're crying.
We have to just laugh about some of it, not to cry, but there was an awful lot of tears and sadness during that season. But I just know that, thank goodness for those who were able to come and help us to muck out our house. And then also I had quite a few, friends that were able to come and help me think. We call it, you have this foggy brain whenever something traumatic like that happens to you. And it was almost like you didn't know what to do first, because it was so overwhelming and such a mess, and not walking through that before. I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know what this experience entailed. And so I had some friends that came and said, okay, let me help you. You've got to pack up the things that are salvageable, the clothes and just the things in the cabinets. Let's get some boxes. Let's help you, box these things up, because they were literally, like you said, knocking out the wall 4 feet up around, which meant they were taking out cabinets. It was just a lot.
Carrying out all your appliances to put at the road, taking out the fireplace, all your granite. I mean, everything is and I'm of the mindset, let's try to salvage as much as we can.
Which we did.
This is one thing that a lot of times people say, and if you say this, I'm gonna correct you on this. A lot of times when people go through, a natural disaster, people say, well, it's just stuff. You can replace stuff. Don't say that. And here's I've said that before as well, but here's what we realized through this. You're right, it is just stuff, but it's my stuff. And a lot of that stuff, you're wrong. It cannot be replaced.
There's heirlooms. There's family heirlooms and different things that cannot be replaced.
And I listened to a lady this morning. We were watching Fox News, and there was a woman in North Carolina that they lost everything. And I mean, it was one of these things. They had a mudslide come through. They're talking about the disaster that they've been through. And she makes a comment, these are memories and mementos. We can't get them back. Like everything is. Right. So it's not just, hey, it's just stuff. You can replace it. Yeah, but it's my stuff. And it is, some of these things can't be replaced. Some of these pictures and videos, our wedding video cannot be replaced. The videos of the boys when they were little, they can't be replaced. Yeah, you have the memories, but as we get older, sometimes those memories get a little foggy. So, I know people a lot of times just want to, say things to help. And they're just trying to help in a situation like that. But
to say, oh, that's just material things can be replaced. Yes, that is true. Material things can be replaced, but yet those heirlooms
Yeah,
cannot.
they can't be replaced.
Hmm.
And so I know for us it was the most difficult thing I've ever walked through in my entire life.
Hmm.
The reason why is because we're having to personally rebuild. We're having to rebuild a church, and we're also having to walk with a church family through this as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're used to having to helping people. We don't do very well with asking for help. I remember I had a lady call me one day, and she was aggravated that I was not at her house helping her, and I had to tell her. I said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I'm at my house right now, mucking my house out." Because everybody was just at that, everybody's overwhelmed.
We had no help to send. If people called and asked for, can you send a team that can help me? Everybody was
Yeah.
taking care of their own because
So,
everyone was affected.
so I'm going to close out this episode in this way, and we're going to go into a part 2 for the next episode. I'm going to close out this episode with saying this. There's going to be a lot of, when you walk through something like this, a lot of volunteers, a lot of help, a lot of organizations. Get all the help you can,
Hmm.
and don't be afraid to ask for help. For me, I don't like asking for help. I don't like receiving help. I'm the one who likes to help. So don't be afraid or ashamed to ask for help, because
Right.
that's what people are there for. And God is sending people your way to help you and assist
In your
you
time of
with what you're
need.
walking through.
That's right.
So I think we're going to have to go ahead and wrap up this episode today, because we've actually gone a little bit long talking about, our story of what we walked through in natural disaster. But today, as we wrap this up, you have anything else you want to add before we close out?
Well, we just want to thank everybody for joining us today, and as we've been sharing this story that we encountered, and we have even more to share on the next episode. So we do hope that us sharing this has helped you in some way, if you have gone through a natural disaster, or if you're in the position to help someone who's been through a natural disaster. We hope that this has helped you.
So thank you guys for listening today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode. And as always, I'm Jay.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is Love Like Crazy.